Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Project Egg Show. Today, we have the honor of speaking with Dan Janal. Dan has written more than a dozen books to help businesses build their brands, including his newest book, Write Your Book in a Flash. That's pretty meta. He works with thought leaders and business owners as book coach, developmental editor, and ghostwriter, as an award-winning daily newspaper reporter and business newspaper editor. He interviewed President Gerald R. Ford and First Lady Barbara Bush, among others. He was on the PR team that launched AOL. As a publicity marketing expert, he has helped more than 10,000, that's 4 zeros, y'all, authors and experts build their platforms with his highly regarded PR leads and guaranteed press release services. Y'all, put your digital hands together for Dan Janal. How you doing today, Dan?
Doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me on your show. It's really a real honor.
Absolutely. The pleasure's all mine. Let's jump right in. What is your story?
Okay. Great place to start. When I was a little kid, I dreamed of writing the Great American Play, not the Great American Novel, but the Great American Play. So I was always writing short stories and plays and things like that. And when I went to college, I thought, I could become an English major and be able to dissect Hemingway and Fitzgerald and all that stuff, or I could become a reporter and learn about the real world and get real stories. So I went to journalism school at Northwestern and worked for a bunch of small newspapers in Florida and then New York State and became a business editor. And life has a way of just dealing in different tricks along the way. So I started joined a PR firm at the beginning of the computer revolution back in the 1980s. And I introduced the CD-ROM technology, which is kind of interesting because at one time people couldn't afford a CD-ROM and they were dying to get a CD-ROM. And now you don't even need a CD-ROM. So it's come full cycle. But we also did the first PR for America Online. So when this little thing called the internet came along, it was like, wait a second, we're struggling to get publicity for America Online, and this internet thing is on the front page of every newspaper. And you have to think about it. There is no internet company. There's no internet board of directors. There's no money being paid to a PR firm to promote the internet. It just organically came out of nowhere and took over the entire world in a very short time. So I could see the writing on the wall. So I wrote what was considered one of the first books about marketing on the internet back like 25 years ago. And that's when like Al Gore and I were like the only people on the internet. It was fun. In fact, I remember teaching a class at Berkeley. It was the first internet marketing class at Berkeley. And one student raised their hand and they said, I heard you couldn't market on the internet. And it was just for scientists and educators. I said, no. You have Pizza Huts on the internet. You can order pizza on the internet. And people said, why would you want to go to the internet to order pizza? You pick up your phone and just order a pizza. What do you need the internet for? And now we use our phones to go on the internet to order pizza. We would think like, why would you ever want to call them? Why would we want to talk to them? So the world has changed. I've seen a lot of great changes along the way. And one of the great changes I've seen is the use of books, which is what we're going to talk about today. Books are the ultimate branding tool. And I know you want to dig deeper into that. And I realized that because books made a big difference in my career. My first book, which I self-published back in 1991, when the tools were very primitive and it was a lot more difficult than it is today, and I know we'll talk a little bit about that. It was a book on how to publicize high-tech products and services. And I sold it to the Software Publishers Association and made a lot of money, and it was really good. It launched my career because I could use that book as a way to stand out from all the other PR people who went to the software publishers shows and meetings. And because we're all the same, and we all have good reputations, we all are honorable people, we all went to good schools, we had good clients. So why would you hire me instead of this other person? Well, I'm the one who wrote the book on how to publicize high-tech products and services. And sure enough, there'd be a couple of people waiting at the back of the room saying, hey, can I talk to you about how to hire you? And they say, sure. So writing books and really made a big difference in my career. Here's 25 years later say it really does work. And other people still buy the book. But of course, I've written 13 books since then. You can't rest on your laurels. But one book can really propel your career. So when I was starting out as a PR person, it was the book that really made the difference. I know a lot of people listening today are starting their businesses and wondering, how do I stand out from everyone else who's in the same spot as I am? And it might just be write a book. And we're going to dig deeper into that today. So thanks. That's my story. I'm sticking with it.
That's fantastic. So, as everybody who's watching and listening can clearly tell, Dan is the expert. I mean, since way back when. I mean, you've been doing this for years now, decades now, and we were talking a little bit before the interview, and you mentioned to me, and I was very very grateful for the for you being willing to offer this. But we've actually put together a resource for everybody who sticks around with us till the end. Now, we're not going to tell you what it is until then. So stick around to find out what it is, but we're going to give you a freebie that was put together by Dan, the Ninja Master himself. So stick around until the end. Now, Dan, let's jump back to your story. Let's go back even further to your childhood. What did it smell like?
Turpentine. My family owned a hardware store. So this is back in the days before Home Depot and whatever, where, you get turpentine delivered by trucks and all those things for the paint supplies and whatever. And, these big trucks would come and they, put their pumps and hoses into these vats, underground vats, I guess. And my uncle would, someone come and say, I need a quart of turpentine. You go to this machine, it's like a pump, and you just pump it into this glass cylinder or metal container, and there's your gallon of turpentine. So it smelled like sawdust and turpentine and other things you'd find in an old-timey hardware store. That is a question we did not discuss. And I bet no one has ever given you that answer before.
No, that's definitely a first.
Yeah, but I definitely remember, like, I was too young to really wait on customers or things. So there was a little basement area that we had for the oversupplies. The stock room was under a basement as opposed to like in the back room, because there was no back room. There wasn't enough room. So it was in a basement. So they had a lot of the turpentine, a lot of the paints, and a lot of the thinners and whatever down on the shelves there. And I was like in charge of like arranging them and bringing them upstairs and restocking and whatever. So I remember going up and down those wooden stairs and smelling, it had a very distinct turpentine kind of, mineral oil, chemical kind of smell that if I'd stayed in that business, I'd probably be dead from chemicals right now.
Well, good thing you're not. I
can't imagine what your follow-up question is going to be.
So working, in the family business, do you feel like being immersed in that and being so ingrained in that from a young age really helped to impact your self-identity, your view of self?
That's another really good question. And I'd have to say, yeah, because my family basically was entrepreneurial when you come right down to it. My grandfather came over on the boat from Russia, and like many other immigrants back in the 1800s, and he went to school at Cooper Union, which is in New York, which is a trade school, a mechanical trade school. And to this day, they don't charge tuition, which is probably why he got in. And that was their mission to train people. And he got his degree in whatever mechanical engineering. In fact, I have blueprints. After my mother died, we discovered these blueprints that are literally 100 years old. They're like hand-drawn blueprints that are like as wide as your desk, and with like these intricate hand-drawn threads for screws and nails and other complex machine parts, whatever, all done by hand. Like, oh my God, this is. Now you have CAD/CAM programs that do that in like 2 minutes, but back 100 years ago, they did it. So, but he owned a hardware store, my grandfather, and my uncle took it over. I grew up in it as well, and one of my uncles became a doctor. My mother worked in the store, of course, and she became a teacher, and so it was always just part of our lifestyle. And, So yeah, we didn't grow up in a corporate environment where, you worked 9 to 5. It was like you worked whatever you had to work. And, Wednesdays were very long days, and Saturdays were very long days, and Sundays were off. And it was, so in fact, people say you owned a store, and it was really, no, the store owned us. And my uncle eventually sold the store because, my brother and I didn't want to go into the business, and there's no one for him to leave it to. So he eventually sold the store and, moved on and became a salesman. But yeah, it was, it set the roots, to go back to your question, it set the roots for saying, yeah, this is possible. You can be your own boss. You can run your own hours. You can do your own thing. And for the last 20 plus years, I've run my own PR firm and digital marketing agency and writing books, and whatever it morphed into because I had the freedom and flexibility to know way back that you can set your own course and probably do a whole lot better than if you work for somebody else and, let them make all the money off you. In fact, back in Jersey City, where I grew up and where the store was, my grandfather probably hired 4 or 5 kids who then started their own hardware stores that competed with his. And that's just the way life is. He was their mentor, and then they became their competitor. Of course, in a big city like that, different geographical areas, you might compete, you may not compete, or this area needs its own hardware store, so you could have your own territory. But I'm sure there was some competition and some crossover and some deals that couldn't get done because there was another competitor in town. But everyone watched out for each other back then. Everyone, it was part of a big extended family where everyone knew each other and everyone took care of each other. So that's another great thing about entrepreneurs. But again, the store owned us. We didn't own the store. That was another important lesson. And I remember writing in high school in my little journal that, I didn't want to sell rat poison for the rest of my life. So here we are, never having sold rat poison.
Lucky for the rats, huh?
There's a need for people to sell rat poison. Having seen some mice around our house, yeah, we live near a lake, so yeah, we do have mice here once in a while. So there's a need for it, but that's not my role.
What was your relationship like with your parents growing up?
My parents were divorced, so I really don't want to go into that. My father died when I was young, and my mother died about 10 years ago. So, she was one of the first single mothers kinds of growing up kind of thing. So, it was, she worked for the government, so she got paid as much as a man. But in fact, it's back to the 70s. I didn't realize that women's lib was a thing until it was a thing, because I thought, well, of course women should work because my mother worked. And of course, women should get paid the same as men because my allowance was directly tied to her raises and salary. So why shouldn't she get paid the same as a man? So when women's lib hit in the 70s, it was like people actually thought women shouldn't work, and if they did work, they shouldn't get paid the same as men. It's like, where did that come from? So,
As you were growing older and you were getting into high school, thinking about college, what were some of the things that you valued? Like, where did you spend your time? What did you like to do with your time?
I read a lot, hung out with friends, of course. But I remember one summer I just read like 50 different books. I mean, just like voracious reading. I go to the park and read. I get my bicycle and just bicycle down to Bayonne Park and find a spot in a tree near water and just read. So I guess other people were out partying or drinking or whatever. I was out reading. So, so that's what I remember about high school,
What was the draw? Why were you so passionate about reading?
It just came naturally. I don't know. It's a good question. Just gravitated toward it. Like some people gravitate toward playing baseball. I was horrible at playing baseball. Tried to, just horrible. I didn't get coordinated until not in my teens, let's put it that way. So I was the last person picked for every sporting event and all that. And that takes its wear on you. So maybe I found solace in books. Maybe books were interesting. Just gravitated toward it. Some people run, some people play baseball, some people play basketball. I read.
Why was your dream to write the next great American play?
It was just there. I don't know when it happened, but it was there from an early age. I had an ear for dialogue. I wrote plays when I was in high school. I mean, little satires of, class situations and making fun of teachers and, stuff that kids do. But that's what I was gravitating towards. Haven't written the Great American Play yet, but that's actually one of the interesting things because I'm doing more ghostwriting now. Most of my books have been nonfiction, how to protect yourself on the internet. I wrote one of the first books about, identity theft and all those other problems that could happen on the internet, which have unfortunately come to pass. I wrote another book that was one of the first books about voice recognition technology, and all of that has come to pass. So I've been ahead of the times. A lot of times I've written other books that have done well, some have not done very well, but they've all been nonfiction. Recently, I had a new client, a doctor who wanted to write a book about telemedicine. He hired me to write a book about telemedicine because he thought that was the next big thing. And he presented me with this outline, and it was your typical frequently asked questions about telemedicine. If you don't know what telemedicine is, it's doctors diagnosing you over the phone or the internet or Skype. You say, I got this burn on my arm. What should I do? It's like, hold it up to the camera. Oh, that's a third-degree burn. You should go to the emergency room right now. We're like, oh, that's not too bad. You should put some aloe on that, and you'll be okay in 2 days. And insurance companies love it because you don't have, it costs a lot less to do that. And of course you love it because you don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to drive, take 3 hours out of your life and sit next to people in a waiting room who are sick. Anyway, all that's to the good, but a frequently asked question file about telemedicine is boring. And in fact, when I did some research online, I found frequently asked question files about telemedicine, and it was done. So there's no need to do it again. So he said, what do we do? And I said, well, why don't we write this as a business parable, like Who Moved My Cheese, or The 1 Minute Manager, or The Go-Giver, and, turn it into a story. He said, that sounds interesting. So we did. We actually wrote a book together that used fictional devices to tell a story of this woman who lost her insurance and needed to find some way to protect her family and blah, blah, blah. She finds telemedicine, and she finds some good things. She finds some bad things. She develops this 10 things you should watch out for to make sure you have a good experience when you're dealing with the telemedicine doctor, because there's some pretty bad things to watch out for. There's some great things too, but there could be some pretty bad things. So that was a lot of fun. Then he hired me again to write another book about, are you sitting down for this? Medicare. Real exciting thing there. Well, I told him about the first book. If we put in a chase scene and a murder, we could turn this into a thriller. So we said, why don't we do that for the Medicare book? So sure enough, we have some chase scenes and some murders. And so we're trying to let people know how to find the right Medicare program by using fictional devices. So you're all saying, like, what does this have to do with your question? The point is, I started doing a lot of research online to learn about fiction techniques, because I knew about nonfiction, but what do writers do? Because I didn't take a course on nonfiction writing in college. I took journalism courses to write about city council meetings and things like that. So it was a totally new field for me. And I read a lot of great books and found wonderful courses online and great websites online, and basically found coaches who could help me overcome what I didn't know, which was very, very instructive. So I was on one website, and they said, we're going to have a contest. We're going to have a short story contest. And here are the parameters. There's one word as a prompt. It's winter. And you can write anything you want as long as it involves winter. I thought, okay, I'm up for the challenge. So I wrote this mystery story set in the winter. And I thought it was the greatest short story ever. In fact, I thought it was so wonderful that I was going to write a whole bunch more short stories, because I had all these other ideas, and put them in a book and maybe self-publish. And if it took off, maybe get a real publisher for it. But I just had this burning desire, because, man, this is the best short story ever. And there was a contest. So, I figured like another month or two, they're going to tell me that I won. And a month later, they said, these are the 5 books that are the 5 stories that are in the finalists, and you can vote for your favorite to be the winner. It's like, how come my book isn't there? Or my short story is like, and the site editors gave me some feedback that was like, this is not the best short story of all time. great plot, great ideas, but there are a number of fictional techniques that I was not aware of at that time. And one of the things I realized about writing a book is that it takes a village to write a book. You lose your own perspective when you're writing a book because it's a big thing. You don't notice redundancies, or you may tell a story and it doesn't have the desired effect that you thought it would. I've noticed that when I do editing with some of my clients. They tell a story and they said, this is a story that shows pride or honor. It's like, no, this is a story that shows something else entirely. So, oh, really? So you need feedback. You need a coach. You need an editor to come in there and tell you what works and what doesn't work. And that can make a big difference because you just don't have your book go out there and say, oh my God, I made horrible mistakes. We're not talking about typos, which you don't want to have anyway, but it's like my whole premise was wrong. It's like, oh my God. So that was one of the things I learned about writing is that you can be a good writer. You can be good in something. You can be a good salesperson. You can be a good talker. You could be a good communicator. You could be a good people person. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be able to write a book that can share those same stories. You might come 80% close, which is a B. And a B is good, but you want to make it an A. And that's where you need a coach, you need an editor, you need someone to work with to bring it up to that next level. So those are the kinds of services that I provide now, and I get a great kick out of it. So if you're going to ask me, like, why do you enjoy doing this, and why do you do this instead of writing your own books? Why do you work with that with other people? It's because I like seeing that piece of coal that I can polish into a diamond, and the author doesn't see it themselves until I point it out and say, aha. Can I tell you a quick story about that?
Yeah, please.
Okay. I was working with this woman named Amber, and it's her real name, and she was writing a book, a self-help book for women aged 35 to 50 who have kids who no longer need them. And I'll go into that. We'll say no longer need them. Well, remember, when they're 6 years old, it's like, Mommy, come here. Mommy, do this. Mommy, I need this. Mommy. When they're 16 years old, suddenly it's, Mom, leave me alone. Mom, give me some space. Mom, get out of my room. Slam the door. Okay, so now you know her audience, which I thought was brilliant because, frankly, a lot of these self-help books, they're all the same. There's not much more that could be done. There's certain principles, and they go in style and they go out of style. And what makes them different are your stories. So in the middle of chapter 3, I'm reading through the same old stuff. Here's flow, here's meditation, here's mindfulness, here's gratitude. Okay, it's all fine. But then she starts with a story. And the headline is, sorry to gross you out. Well, now that's a real catcher. And the next couple of paragraphs talk about her stretch mark from having babies. And she said, I have this big, ugly stretch mark on my belly. It's about 1.5 feet long. It looks like an earthworm is crawling out of my skin, but it's my badge of honor because it shows that I had 4 children and I gained 180 pounds. I've lost all but 20 of those pounds. I'll probably never lose that other 20 pounds. I thought, oh my God, every woman in the world is going to relate to this. What is this story doing in the middle of chapter 3? So I said, Amber, this is your signature story. This should really be the first story in your book because everyone can relate to it. And especially when she says she wears it as her badge of honor. So she's turning something from a negative into a positive, which is brilliant positioning. And then I had another epiphany. I said, stretch marks. Well, what would be a better name for a book that talks about going beyond your comfort zone and extending beyond your goals than Stretch Marks, which is the name for a book, and Morgan James is publishing it. And I think they're in the final stages now. So within a couple of weeks or a few months, you'll be able to buy your own copy of Stretch Marks. And that all came about because I was her developmental editor, and I was able to read through her book and see what she couldn't see because she was too close to it. And also because I had the perspective of seeing what the marketplace needs and wants and what's been overdone and what could be used to make it better. So that's another reason why you want to work with someone else to get that expertise that they have that you don't have. So 1 + 1 = 3.
So when you were going from college into the professional world, working with those magazines, really developing your career, how did you then upgrade or transition or evolve into winning awards, running your own PR agency, writing a ton of books. Like, what was that evolution, and what were some of the main turning points, the main pivotal moments and milestones along that journey?
Okay, that's about one step forward and two steps back. Which could be inspirational for people listening to this call, because nothing is a straight line straight up. I was a reporter, got a job working for a newspaper in Florida, and covered incredibly boring city council meetings in Cocoa Beach and Cape Canaveral and a town called Vero Beach, and little towns up the Florida coast where it was just, they talk about, garbage, literally garbage, garbage trucks coming through town, how much we're going to charge them, and raising taxes and whatever. I was like, God awful boring. But if you stick with something long enough, you learn things. So I was covering schools, and I really liked it because you could speak to like school counselors and psychologists, and talk about all the good things the schools were doing, and it was fun. But back then, they wanted to raise like $21 million to build 3 new schools and upgrade other schools. And $21 million doesn't sound like a lot of money today, but back then that was like a fortune, especially considering we're talking about Florida, where every grandparent there has kids who go to school in New York, not Florida. So they certainly didn't want to raise their taxes to pay for other kids going to school. So the school board had a real tough time figuring out, how to get these people to vote for the bond referendum to build the schools. And I was pretty friendly with the state rep at the time. His wife actually wrote the gossip column for our newspaper, or the society column. It was Society for Florida. It's like, let's call it the gossip column. It's better to call it that. They were delightful people. And I discovered this loophole. There was this thing in Florida that basically said you didn't have to pay tax on the first $25,000 of your valuation of your home. It was just an exemption. And I realized that this was not Miami Beach. This was Vero Beach. This was a smaller, less affluent area. And most of the houses weren't worth $50,000. So in essence, they wouldn't be paying taxes because it was exempt. Their houses were exempt because they were below that $25,000 limit. So I went up to the state rep and I said, Dale, walk me through this. And I told him the scenario I just told you. And he said, yeah, that's how it would work. And I said, well, who would pay the bill? Because if the citizens approve the bond referendum, then the school would get built, people get paid. Who would pay the bond? He said, oh, the state of Florida would have to pay it because of the exemption. I said, oh, well, I can't say that because I'm a reporter. Can you say that? And he did. And he got reelected, and the bond issue passed. So I consider that my highlight is being a reporter, because I actually was able to do something good for the kids in that county and get 3 schools built and get other schools get air conditioning and other things they need to upgrade. And I won an award from the Florida teaching profession and the National Education Association. So that was my good deed. But a lot of the stuff I wrote was just boring ass stuff. Just was not going to make the great American play. I'll tell you that. It was like, oh, can't believe this. So I transferred within the newspaper group. Group was Gannett, which owns USA Today, and I was a city editor and a business editor of their papers just outside of New York City, just as USA Today was starting, and no one thought that USA Today was going to survive. It was a big experiment. Of course, now it's a big success. But when it first started, everyone was deriding it. They called it McPaper. They said it was, a lot of color and a lot of fluff and short articles. And who wants to read short articles and want to read longer articles? Well, turns out people want color and people want short articles, and they were right. But back then, they didn't know that. So they basically took people from our local newsrooms and gave them temporary jobs at USA Today, because if they folded USA Today, they had to guarantee the jobs at the local newspapers. And meanwhile, the local newspapers were paying these people salaries. So if you want to launch a national newspaper, that's the way to do it on the cheap. They had no downside risk, outside of whatever their costs were to create the distribution network, whatever. But employees, they were all paid for. So I realized, I'd go to work at 6 a.m. I was the business editor of this newspaper. And my news hole shrunk from about 12 pages to about 4 pages. And 3 of those pages were the stock tables. So there wasn't a whole lot of room for anything else. And my business reporter was recruited. So I had a half-time business reporter who also covered cops. And so I walked into my managing editor's office one day and I said, what's going on? And he told me that until USA Today figured out if it was going to be a go or not, they're going to give it like a 5-year trial period, that we were in a holding pattern, that we were profitable within the Gannett system, and they were going to drain our profits to pay for USA Today, and the other local newspapers too. So I said, well, that means that my career is on hold for 5 years. I said, well, unless you want to go to Wall Street and work for USA Today. And I said, well, no one wants to do that. Bad career move. But at the time, again, it was really derided as Mick newspaper. It was not respected at all. So I interviewed some guy who was with a PR firm, and he offered me a job. I feel like, okay, time to make a move, because PR journalism people always go into PR sooner or later anyway. So I figured, okay, this is my shot. And it turns out this was the company, the PR firm, that did the PR for a company called K-Pro, which was synonymous with the word computer back in 1980s. This was before the IBM PC came out, before the IBM Junior came out, before MS-DOS was the key operating system. So I was really there at the very beginning, and I was doing PR for K-Pro, and then worked for another PR firm that dealt with Commodore, which was one of the early investors of America Online. So I met Steve Case back in the very, very early days of computing. And one thing just led to another. Again, this one step forward, 2 steps back, and you never know which way things are going. And just go along for the ride.
So when you were gathering all of this experience, you're obviously learning a lot, you're building a name for yourself, and you're moving your career forward. At what point were you like, okay, this is the time, it's perfect for me, I'm ready to write a book, let's go, let's do it?
Oh, I thought you were going to ask, when did you start your own business? So I'm going to answer that question. Okay. I was not appreciated at my PR firm. So I took this job as an editor with a trade publication, and they basically misled me about what the job was. And they weren't too happy with me, and I wasn't too happy with them. And 3 months later, they gave me my walking papers. And I realized at that point that I could either start my own business or go back and work for another PR firm. And one of my friends said, hey, you're 27 years old, you're not married, you don't have any kids, you don't have any responsibilities. If you start your own business and it doesn't work out, then you can get a job in a PR firm, no problem. But if you go to a PR firm now, you'll never know if you could have done it on your own. And that was what got me to start my own firm. So that's really what I meant by 1 step forward, 2 steps back. I got this job as an editor, and then suddenly it was like the worst job in the world. But it led to my eventually starting my own PR firm, which was very successful. And I could write my own ticket and write my own hours and do my own thing. And yeah, I had about 6 months of money in the bank, which I think is important for an entrepreneur. You have to have money in the bank so you don't have to worry. So I knew that I could pay the rent, I could pay my car, pay for car insurance, pay for gas, go out on some dates, nothing extravagant, but I didn't have to be so poor that I would take anything that would come along, because you don't want to grab the first thing if it really sucks, because then you'll hate working for your clients and life becomes hell again. So I had 6 months of savings in the bank, and I would go to a software show, and I'd work for the trade show daily and write a couple of articles and make $50 a piece for those, and then I'd try to meet people and network and get clients, and that worked. And I spoke at the software publishers conferences, and I would always pick up 2 clients, and they'd be good for about 6 months, and then pick up 2 more clients and 2 more clients. And so I went from having like 6 months of money in the bank to 7 months of money in the bank to a year's worth of money in the bank to 2 years worth of money in the bank, to the point where I just stopped tracking it anymore because it was just working. So you can start your own business. but cash flow is important too. Okay. I'm sorry for that diversion. Ask me a question. It's your show.
So now that you're here, right?
Mhm.
You've had all this success, you've built your own business, you've written a ton of books. Let's talk about tactically what people need to be learning from you.
Sure. When you write a book, I get the same questions almost every week. I do an Ask Me Anything show on the last Friday of every month. And, anyone on this call is invited to participate as well. So I'll take questions from anyone and I'll answer those questions and I'll record the questions and I'll put them up on YouTube. And all my questions and answers are on my YouTube channel, which is Write Your Book in a Flash. Here's a marketing tactic for you. The name of your book is the name of your business. It's the name of your website. It's the name of your Facebook page. It's the name of your Instagram. It's the name of your YouTube channel. It's the name of everything. So you don't have to start to wonder with 16 different variations. It's Write Your Book in a Flash on YouTube or on the Facebook group. Or on my website. So I post those questions there. And there are two questions that come up all the time. It's like, what do I write about? And how can I get people to read my book? And the answers are deceptively simple because it's like, why do people read a book? They want to find the answers to their pressing questions. It's like a search engine. It's like they go to Google. Why do people go to Google? They want to find the answer to a question. Same thing for a book. They're looking for a deeper answer to the question. So the first thing you have to ask yourself when you're writing your book or planning your book is to say, what questions, what problems do my readers or my prospects have? Because let's face it, the book today is a big business card. No one wants to read the entire encyclopedia about your topic. They just don't. They want to get on a plane in New York, and by the time they land in LA, they want to be done with the book. That's the purpose of a business book and the length of a business book. So we're talking about 20,000 words, not 80,000, not 100,000. We're not talking about a Stephen King novel. We're talking about something that is, this thick, half an inch, 3/4 inch, 120 pages. When I say thick, some of you are listening without seeing the audio. I meant the spine of the book, the thickness of the book. They're about 3/4 of an inch, an inch. It's about 120 pages to 20,000 words, which is easily doable. Because if you think you have 10,000, if you have 10 chapters, it's 2,000 words per chapter. Think about your blogs. How many articles do you write? How hard would it be to write a 2,000 word article? That's a chapter in your book. That's what people want to read today. They don't want to read the entire encyclopedia. They want to find the answers to their problems quickly. So you need to figure out what questions people have. And you can do that by asking your audience. If you have a mailing list, if you have salespeople, if you talk to prospects, they'll tell you what their problems are. Just start listening intently and writing them down. Or you could go to Amazon and look for other books in your category and read the reviews, because these reviews will tell you, I really like this book, but I wish it had more information about whatever. And say, aha, I should include that because people want that. So if you don't have a mailing list and if you don't have prospects and you don't have salespeople to ask and whatever, that's another way to find the information. Go to Amazon and look, and the answers are there. So then the next question is, how do I get people to read my book? Well, frankly, it takes a lot of money and a lot of effort to market a book, and all these books that are bestsellers and whatever. It's a massive undertaking. And I say, you don't have to worry about marketing your book that way. You're not interested in creating a bestseller on Amazon. You're interested in getting more business, because frankly, if you sell a book on Amazon, you might make $3. That's books are pretty cheap on Amazon, and Amazon is going to take their cut. And if you deal with a traditional publisher, they're going to take their cut, and an agent is going to take her cut, and on and on. And what are you left with? About $1.50 per book. You can spend a lot of time and energy and money to make $1.50 for a book, or you can take that same book and go to a networking meeting and give it to a prospect. Or you can go online and find the 10 companies in your town that you'd love to work for. Find out the name of the person who does the hiring in your area. Be the CEO or the marketing person or the finance person or the realtor or whatever, and send them the book with a personal note saying, hey, I think I read about your problem in the newspaper. I think chapter 4 addresses that problem. I'd love to talk with you and see how I can help your company solve that problem as well. And then you're doing, one-to-one marketing. And that's really what it's all about. And that's where your book becomes the big business card that separates you from everyone else and positions you as the expert in the field and positions you as the trusted leader who can guide them from their mess to success. That's the purpose of the book. Not to become an instant bestseller or an Amazon bestseller, but to get business. Because think about your average client. How much money do you make from your average sale? Is it $100? Is it $500? Is it $5,000? Is it $50,000? If you're building houses, is it $500,000? Well, that's what the book can do for you. It can get you that kind of client, and $100 return on your investment is a lot better than $1 return on your investment. Of course, if you are in the 50,000 or the more commas, the more zeros, more power to you. But even on the lower dollar amounts, you can make a lot more money with the book as your business card to get the consulting and the kind of work that you want.
So let's say I'm in the audience right now and I'm thinking, okay, you've sold me on the idea of writing a book. I recognize that I can go and use my book as a business card. I can hand it to my ideal prospect. That will impress them, at least get me a meeting to where I can go sell. Okay, great. I get it intellectually. That makes sense. Where do I start? What do I do? What are the next steps?
Okay, great. There are a couple of different ways to start. You might have the content already. You really might. If you're doing podcasts, if you're doing articles, if you've been on webinars, if you do speeches, if you do presentations, you could take the transcripts from those events and turn it into a book. Now, will it do what I said, the 8 problems that people have or whatever? That's the ultimate. That's what I would hope as a starting point. But you could have 8 other great points, 8 ways to become a great leader, 8 things to look for when buying or selling your home or whatever, that's fine. But you might have the content already there. So many of you may not be starting from square one. So that's cool. If you are starting from square one, then I think you should you should buy my book because it'll have it all laid out in there. But in a nutshell, figure out what those 8 key points are and create an outline for your book. So the first chapter is the overview of why you're the expert. What is your story? A couple of questions that you asked for this interview. Same thing. People want to get to know, like, and trust you, so they want to work with you. Same deal. So that's the first chapter, and it also provides the roadmap for the other 8 chapters that follow. And the 8 chapters that follow, of course, are the problems that you are solving for them. And those could be stories that you've written or you can write that are case studies of clients that you've worked with. And then the last chapter tells them how they can work with you. And you might be saying, well, that sounds like selling. That doesn't sound kosher. Well, no, just the opposite. At this point, they do want to know how they can work with you. If you don't tell them that you speak, you consult, you do this, you do that, you do the other thing, they're not going to know. They're not going to intuitively say to themselves, oh, he wrote this book. He's just an author. I bet he doesn't do this kind of work. You'd be surprised at people. You really would. You have to write it down in print saying, I work with people just like you to do this kind of thing. And they say, oh, then I should call him. And then you tell them how they can call you or what the next step is. So in my case, it's usually a 15 or 20-minute free consultation to see if it's a good fit. Because, frankly, there are good fits and bad fits. And if it's a bad fit, no one wants to get into it. It's like buying a pair of shoes. If they don't fit at the store, they're not going to feel any better a month later. So there could be people that you get along with and people say, I just don't like him. I don't like her, for whatever reason, and that's fine. And some people, they could be a bad fit by topic. They may not know anything about your topic. They may not care about your topic. They may be bored by your topic, or they may not really understand it and completely screw it up. So you want to check them out. And from my perspective, I want to make sure these people are real. They're not flakes, that they have the money to do this and make it all worthwhile. So there's vetting on both sides. So that's the way I do it. Everyone listening on this call has different products and different services. So of course they'll be asking different questions, looking for different things. But in case my case is, I set up another phone call. Other people may meet for coffee. They may meet in their offices. They may meet in their homes if they're realtors. So it all depends on what you're doing. But when I work with my clients, we figure out what their end game is. We figure out what they really want the book to do for them. So we can structure those 10 chapters and those 20,000 words so that every word is really geared toward making that sale and positioning you as the key person, the logical person that they want to hire.
So Dan, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show today and sharing what you have. I really do appreciate you sharing your story and getting a little tactical today. It's truly been a pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. I don't think I've ever had anyone ask me what my childhood smelt like. That's a good one. We have a gift to give people too. Don't forget that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I have a few more questions for you,
Oh, sure. Okay,
and then we'll wrap it on up.
Okay.
So we've talked a lot about your professional journey coming here. We got a little bit tactical, and I'm sure everybody's very excited to start thinking about it, or at least start taking the next steps with their book. So that freebie at the end will really be a good kickstart to take the next step. But parallel to that professional journey of yours, what's been going on in your personal life this whole time?
I am branching out. I'm playing my guitar. I'm having some fun with that. I'm really taking care of my body. I joined Orange Theory Fitness about 3 years ago, and they're a rapidly growing chain. And unlike other fitness places where you go in and you work out and you leave, pretty much unstructured by yourself, here you work with a trainer in a group setting for an hour. For 30 minutes, you're doing cardio, and for 30 minutes, you're doing floor stuff. And they always vary it up so it doesn't get boring. And frankly, that's the problem with why I stopped going to gyms and stuff. It just gets bored. Or if I have a little, my knee hurts a little bit, I think I'll quit today. It's like, no, everyone else is running, you better start running too. And when I joined them 3 years ago, I was like walking on the treadmill. Running was like, why would I run? I can't run. And 3 years later, here I am. I'm proud to say that just this last week was the first time I actually ran at like the 3 different levels they want you to run at full speed in each of those categories. So here I am, 3 years later, probably in the best shape of my life. And, we used to go on vacation though and do all these, I won't say I'd yell at my wife, like, why do you pack so much stuff? And I would grumble at my wife, is a better way of putting it, like, this thing weighs a ton. The last time we went on vacation was like picking up her suitcase. It's like, I'm picking up her suitcase and I'm not complaining. I really am getting stronger. So that's good in my life. And again, the creative writing, I'm really, really enjoying that. I'm playing my guitar more and, just, having some fun, taking advantage of things like that. So that's cool.
That's fantastic. I want to talk about your philosophy, because one of the things that I'm fascinated with is connection. Mm-hmm. And, I want to know, what is your philosophy on developing deep, meaningful, and genuine connection with another person?
That is a great question. This is a really interesting conversation. The deep, meaningful relationships, it's all about honesty and trust. And, this Marie Kondo thing that's going on with the cleaning out your closets and everything. And she holds up, a dress or a book or a CD and says, does it bring you joy? And I think there's a lot going on there, because for like a full year on Facebook, I would say happy birthday to everyone on my network. When you sign up to Facebook and it says, today is, so-and-so's birthday, I say happy birthday. Well, after a year, I wondered how many people actually wrote back and started deep, meaningful conversations. And the answer was 0. Maybe a small percentage would actually say, thanks, Dan. And that would be it. It'd be, thanks, Dan. No, what's new with you? We haven't connected in a while. Tell me about what's going on. No. So that's the tip of the iceberg of people who did respond personally. Most of the people sent out group things, like group messages saying, thanks to everyone who thanked you for my birthday. I'm really honored, and blah, 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 blah. And that was like the 97%, 3%, 97%. That was it. And I'm guessing the people on the call are saying, yeah, that's pretty much what happens to me too. But this year I started doing something different. I said, these people's birthdays came up, and I said, does this person bring me joy? And when I started seeing people's posts in Facebook, and I said, do I even really know this person? And does it bring me joy? And I'd say, like, nah, I really don't. Just people you accept because, they're in the same groups or professions or whatever, and they're okay people and everything, but nothing really developed from them. And they're talking about, their Eagle Scout son and their, cheerleader daughter and their wonderful this, and like, life should not be lived in comparison. And I think Facebook does a really bad job of making everyone feel like everyone else lives in Kodak moments and you're in monochrome. So I just started deleting people if they didn't fill me with any joy. And what happened as a result is that people whose messages I hadn't been seeing, old friends from high school, some distant relatives, whatever, suddenly their messages were showing up more frequently because the other messages weren't there anymore, because Facebook doesn't show you everything. So there's a lot less crap, frankly. So one way of developing more deep relationships is, spending time with people, being honest with people, being open with people. In fact, one of my good friends posted something on Facebook the other day, and he said, I'm really grateful for all these people in my life. And he named like 8 family members, me and someone else. And this is a person who's outgoing, knows a lot of people, who's very well known in the industry. I thought, like, of all the people he knows, he singled me out. And I could see on the comments section of, other people that I know, who I thought he was much better friends with. They were not offended that they were not in that header group of people. So I was like, hey, this is really cool. So I'm not sure if that helps. But focusing on the people who really matter, I think that's an important thing, because we spend too much time on phones with these tangential, insincere, fly-by-night kind of relationships. I don't mean that in a negative way. We see each other and then we don't see each other. But sometimes, if people don't call except for business stuff, then they're really not friends. They're business associates. And for a long time, I thought they were my friends. But if you don't have things in common anymore, they're not your friends anymore. So that was an important lesson to realize. And it's important to have business friends. That's your network. Those people are going to help you. You're going to help them. They'll help you. It's important to have them. But I think there's a big difference between friends and business friends. And who are the people you hang out with on Thanksgiving?
What is your greatest theory?
My greatest
theory.
Theory. Oh, probably not original, but if it's to be, it's up to me. I don't remember who said that first. I think one of my Dale Carnegie instructors said that. And, it really is true, that you're the person that can get things done, that makes things done, that no one's going to come along and, do things for you without you first expressing an interest in doing it yourself and making things happen. So you're the catalyst that makes things happen. And when there's some law of attraction in there as well. You let the universe know that you're ready for whatever, and suddenly you get more clients, or you get more money, you get more whatever. But you have to take that first step, because without that, the universe is just saying, I'm not interested. Yeah, I guess. So yeah, you have to take the first step yourself.
So again, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Just have 2 more quick questions for you. Is there anything about yourself that you think is an important part of who you are that I didn't ask you about today? In other words, what did I miss?
I think you went into some deep, dark areas that I haven't thought of in a long time. So I think you hit on some interesting ideas. No, the 2 steps backward and 1 step forward was really part of the one of the great learning things here is that nothing is in a straight line. And, when I started my PR leads business, for those of you who don't know, it's a PR leads is the original matchmaking service between reporters and experts. We get requests from reporters who are writing stories, and then we put them in touch with experts like you, and we charge a fee for that. And for many years, we were the dominant player in that industry. I mean, dominant. I mean, people were just sending us money like left and right. It's like I wasn't even talking to people. They were just, go to my mailbox in the morning, my email box, like 2 new orders, 3 new orders, 4 new orders, 5 new orders. It was friggin' amazing. And then we got competitors. Like everyone is eventually going to get competitors. If you have a great idea, you'll eventually get competitors. We got competitors, and they started offering their service for free, which is really hard to compete with. And that had a big effect on our business. But the point is, the business took off not because I'm a great marketer, but because it was a great service and because people told their friends. And that's a key thing for people to realize, that it was like stair step growth, stair step growth, stair step growth. And people go to their mastermind groups and they'd say, "Hey, what's new?" I say, "Oh, I got into the New York Times." "Oh, really? How'd you do that?" "Oh, I got Dan Janal's PR leads." "Oh, what's that?" "Oh, it puts reporters in touch with you and you answer their questions and they write stories about you." I said, "Oh, great. How can I get that? How much is it?" "Oh, it's like $99. Here's the website." And bingo, it grew and grew and grew. I mean, to the point where it's like really, a 7-figure business. It was amazing. And then competitors came in, as will happen to any business, and it's not a 7-figure business anymore. So it's 1 step forward, 2 step backs. It's not a straight line. Is really what I meant to say. You get your breaks, and you're grateful for them, and watch out for the rainy day, because rainy days come too.
For somebody like me, who's 24, a couple businesses, and the show is my greatest passion, to somebody like you, experienced, written tons of books, built a massive business, really made an incredible name for yourself with a ton of experience and wisdom and knowledge, and you have your genius. What question should I be asking you that I just wouldn't think to ask?
Okay. What is the greatest personal business piece of wisdom I could offer? And it comes from Brian Tracy. And he said that everyone who's at the top of the field today was once at the bottom of the field. Because, everyone started out as a baby. They knew nothing about sales or real estate or cars or consulting or investing or personal finance or whatever, but they read some books, they went to college, they met some people, they worked here, they did that. Everyone who has a 1 million person mailing list or 1 million likes or friends or followers started with nothing. Everyone, including Brian Tracy. And when I see someone like you, you're 24, there's a guy who's 14. doing the same thing. It's like, holy cow, where's he going to be in 10 years? Where are you going to be in 10 years? You got to start somewhere. And everyone starts with 0, and you just build up from there. So I think that's the most inspirational piece of wisdom I can offer. And again, it's from Brian Tracy, because I believe in citing sources. And it is so true. So whenever you get down on yourself and say, "Oh my God, this other person in my field has all these followers and she's making all this money from all these sponsors and all this stuff is going on, and all these other people have these advantages." Well, it's true, that they do. But that doesn't mean that you can't grow your list from 0 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000 and beyond, because it does happen. It really does.
Dan, I want to thank you. Again, I can't say it enough. Thank you very much for coming on the show, for sharing this time with me. It's been very special and truly an honor to be able to speak with you today. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. It's been a real introspective journey.
Fantastic. And to everybody who's listening, I want to thank you all very much for watching, for listening. Thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for sticking with us till the end. I love you guys very much. And now it's time for our super secret, which is about to be not so secret bonus that y'all have unlocked for sticking with us all the way until the end. Dan, you want to tell us a little bit about it, and then I'll tell people how to get it.
Sure. And for those of you who hit the slider button to go ahead 55 minutes, welcome back to the show. Yeah, I've written a very special report that shows you how to write your book fast. Granted, I wrote a book about that. This is the cheat sheet. This is the essentials of what you need to know to overcome your limiting beliefs about how to write the book and how to get started, how to get off to a fast start to write the book. So you can just, you have a special link for that, don't you? So I won't say the link
Absolutely.
because you know that. And just follow the link that you're about to learn, and you'll get that PDF for free. And you'll also be able to arrange for a free, complimentary, no obligation, 20-minute conversation with me to see if I can help you write your book.
Fantastic. So go ahead and type in projectegg.co/flash, FLASH, and that's projectegg.co/flash to go ahead and grab that resource. Now, whenever you are listening to this or watching this, whatever, this will be a dynamic link. So it's going to stay alive. So even if the bonus changes, it will still exist for you in some way, shape, or form. So it might be a cheat sheet. It might be a template. It might be a free workshop. There will always be a bonus at the end of this link. But for right now, it is that cheat sheet that Dan was talking about. So go ahead and go to projectegg.co/flash. It's like a mystery box, like a box of chocolates. You never really know what you're going to get. But regardless of what it is, I can promise you it will be worth your time. And it will help you out. It will help you to expedite your journey in the right direction. So thank you very much for listening. Let's change the world.